Hello everyone, welcome to the new episode of Unscripted Dialogues. I'm your host Aditya Sajwani, and today as a guest I have Arta, and we're going to talk about personal branding and her experience around it. Let's begin the podcast. Thank you, Arta, for agreeing to be a guest on the episode today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited about this conversation.
Alright, so let's begin the episode. What inspired to build your own personal brand?
Okay, personal branding is definitely something I think opens a lot of doors for people.
Mm-hmm.
So as someone, I've always wanted to kind of work for myself, whether it's start my own business or find self-employed kind of pursuits. I kind of realized this is how you differentiate yourself. And, if you're not starting the business, but you are the business, it's really important to have a good kind of background of who you are and make sure you can attract the right people. I also think personal branding as young people is kind of a nice way to stand out. So I was definitely kind of keen to build my personal brand, and I'm still building it. I still don't have it all fully fleshed out, and I don't know fully the direction, but I think something that I speak about with personal branding is if you're authentic and you know what you're interested in and what you want to talk about and move towards, that's okay. You can kind of be building on the go. So I think that's what I'm trying to do right now.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So if someone was to start their own personal brand from scratch, how would you suggest them to do it?
Okay. So I will say, I feel like there's a lot of advice these days that makes young people feel like they have to be doing a million things at once.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also a big believer of timing.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times there would be kind of blank periods in my life where I'm not maybe accomplishing something huge. And I know there's that pressure to always kind of have one accomplishment after the next. But there are times that I kind of believe in seasons and accepting that maybe you're in like hermit mode season, or there's certain periods where you're going to be learning more, certain periods where you just naturally for some reason have more courage, and then you can kind of step out and do things. And so if someone was going to start building their personal brand, I would say think about who you are, what stage of your life you're in, maybe your first year if you're degree, maybe your first year in your professional journey, like a grad student, for example, or you could be even someone starting over in their career. Think about what you care about, so your interests, your values, your aspirations. For me, I would say I value being creative. I quite like project-based work. I feel like end to end, I like envisioning it, and then maybe the fine details. Maybe I don't need to do that. I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. But just for anyone, just kind of figure out what is it that someone could ask you about and you could happily tell them about. And we actually met at this personal branding event that I did.
Yeah.
So I'm going to repeat what I said there. But I think if you have a topic that you could speak about for 20 minutes happily, that's probably a good basis of something that you really care about. And so for you, it would be podcasting. And all the kind of topics that you talk about here, I'm sure that would field a lot of inspiration for you. And that's a really natural place for you to start. And I think everyone can kind of find that within themselves.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. When I thought of personal branding, I think after the pandemic, it was getting all popular, people using social media, and then as a young professional, when you enter the service industry, you get to know the importance of your presence on social media and different platforms. So personally for me, Instagram and LinkedIn were very helpful. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's interesting. I think LinkedIn is like an untapped one for young people for sure. I think you can reach lots of people. You can, kind of build your confidence, build your network in a really important way. Instagram is also a good one. I feel like Instagram, I have my maybe issues of building like a personal brand on Instagram, for example, because I'm also kind of a strong believer in, your friends and your acquaintances don't necessarily need to be your cheering fans on you building your professional career. I know obviously that comes with a caveat of if you're starting a business, of course your friends should try support you. But I always find it maybe Instagram is not the right place for certain types of personal branding, like a more professional kind of service. I think you'd have to kind of cater it all towards why you're this fitness coach and why people should follow you. And I feel like that almost in my head feels like a whole new Instagram. But I think for what you're doing, Instagram is a great platform because you're trying to reach young people who are going to be listening. And I'm sure we'll talk about this, kind of keeping up with what's going on in industries.
Sure.
with podcasting, it is now all over Instagram. It is all over these short videos that you have to be doing to kind of reach people in the right way. And so I'm sure you kind of understand that it is a valuable tool for you.
Because like personally, even when I consume content now, it's like your attention span is reduced with the change in the patterns that has gone from long format 2 3 hour podcasts to like 20-second reels in which you have to put in all the elements so that people just click on your link, and that's makes it put in more efforts for certain reels.
Yeah,
and that's fair.
I'm seeing a lot of stuff at the moment about it's not hard to become it's not hard to be an influencer, it's hard to become an influencer. And I feel like that could probably be correct for many like careers. I feel like now as a young person building your career, it's not necessarily enough to just be applying for the jobs. You also have to, and I hear this as a critique because it is extra kind of mental labor that we're having to do, but we do have to kind of create this whole other personal brand online and find the way to communicate, and that, you know, that does take time and it is a lot of effort. But I think it is kind of just the way things are moving. Like, there is competition out there, but there is also, you know, smart ways to do things. So work smart.
Yeah. Having a personal brand or presence on any kind of, let's say, digital footprint gives you an advantage in comparison in case you're flying to some internship or job, because people know you're putting in more efforts.
I think so. I mean, it's hard to talk about personal branding and then talk about traditional kind of application forms, because they are traditional for a reason, and I'm sure they're not really looking at your Instagram. But if I think there is the opportunity to maybe in a cover letter, or if you can attach a link to say like, here's actually an Instagram page I built about why I want to become a lawyer and some of my struggles, and also there's a really good TikTok I just saw at the moment, and this girl is going through very famous law cases and acting them out on TikTok. I just think there's so many smart ways these days to share your education, share your passion for a topic. And I mean, I think she's a student, so maybe this will apply to her in the future, but it's just showing that she's gone the extra effort and the extra mile. So yeah, I think if you can kind of do something differently, and if you can get the attention of these people who are going to then employ you and going to see that you've actually had this podcast for a year and a half and you've been very consistent, it does build a credibility. And I think that is what personal branding is all about. It's this digital reputation kind of goes beyond what you say you are. It's actually the proof of, or look at what I've been speaking about, look at what I've been really passionate about, and it makes people really trust you, I think.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And the TikTok one as well.
Yeah.
So I assume that you've been getting data or checking out the trends on social medias. What do you think, which are your favorite trends you saw on Instagram or TikTok or any form of short format?
Oh, interesting question. I spent a lot of my time on TikTok, so that was the one that always comes naturally. I quite like the trend, and I think this applies to companies who are kind of maybe trying to be a bit more fun on social media. It's like I'm a girl in marketing. Of course I have, you know, the sticky thing that goes on the back of my phone. I'm a girl in marketing. Of course I'm pestering my boss to record TikToks with me. I kind of like that trend. I think that works both for general consumers and like users of TikTok, but also I think when you put that into like the social media teams, that's always a fun one. Instagram is a tough one, but I will say I always do like a nice kind of reel of a bunch of different shots. And I think if that was in terms of a personal branding thing, say for you, what you could do at the end of a year or 6 months of doing this podcast is you could kind of capture all together the clips or little behind the scenes of you recording this and setting up. And I think that would be kind of like a fun. It's nice to, I think, see a story being told in a bunch of different short clips. So I think that would be maybe the trend.
That's a very nice idea.
Do you have a favourite trend?
You know, it's kind of videos in which people are like, let's say they go on a campus and are like 50 questions with me today, and like few minutes long, 4 or 5 minutes, and they ask, what's your favorite place around campus, or what do you like about this university? Those for me are like, I would watch something like that.
Yeah, I find the university social media channels really interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah, because I think it's something that's, I would normally see it as something that's kind of self-motivated, but then obviously lots of companies are now beginning to hire for this position.
Yeah.
So I found it interesting, like how they are like getting the right applicants, who are these applicants. Some people are really afraid of being on social media and they don't want their own like kind of pages. But then some people are like, oh, happily, I'll be the face of the University of Manchester's Instagram page.
Yeah.
I find that kind of interesting, how they take charge with it.
That's very true. Because when I was looking for universities, I was going on YouTube, finding vloggers of the university.
Take me around the tour of Manchester, like which accommodation should I live in?
Yeah.
Tell me like what I would, you know, need to know.
And I think university is, like, higher education is one of the best businesses. I'll say that. And now you have university, like our university, hiring summer interns for social media creation just to attract people and all that. So that's very interesting how social media has harnessed the power even in things like education to attract people. It's getting competitive as well.
Yeah, it is. And I think there's something interesting I saw recently, which I think we all think about when we go on social media and maybe build a personal brand or just, you know, use social media for fun, is I saw this girl who's studying to be a lawyer, and she wasn't getting a job offer from a law firm, and the reason was because she has a social media page. And I think her traditional mindset on why that was, and what we might jump to think is the reason, is they're scared that I don't know, she's going to infringe on any kind of privacy things, or you know, she's like showing too much of her personal life and she should kind of be a professional. But actually what the reason was is because the law firm was scared, or maybe they already are kind of treating people badly, and they don't want someone who's got this strong platform who could easily then be like, this law firm is terrible and they're not treating employees right and they're not kind of doing what's right. So actually they weren't scared because she was out there showing herself on social media. They were scared of their reputation, kind of the risk to their reputation. And I thought that was an interesting thing, that social media is definitely a way to kind of hold businesses accountable these days.
And that's true, because even you watch those YouTube videos in which you have industry professionals, they will never reveal their company name in the videos.
Yeah, no, of course
like
not.
Top 4 thing, and I'm like, okay, let's open LinkedIn and look up their profile to see what's happening.
Yeah, I like it. You're sneaky. But no, yeah, of course, because these big companies, the PR risk is huge, I think.
Definitely. How did you get into podcasting?
So I started podcasting in my first year at university. It was the COVID year, so I was literally in my room most of the day. I would like hear the food trolley come with my food. And I was just like, best part of my day, and I was just seeking something creative. It was also my first year at university, so there weren't the societies or the extracurriculars that you would normally want. And so I turned to social media quite a lot. And I noticed 2 kind of trends. One, a rise in podcasting. And I was like, interesting. Because I think on social media, you always kind of notice what is popping up, whether it's an algorithm thing or just a completely new form of like content and media. And I was noticing podcasting. I was like, that's interesting. I could maybe do that because I feel more comfortable maybe just sharing my voice and my thoughts rather than videos of myself. And I was also noticing that there were a lot of founders who were talking about their journey as entrepreneurs and CEOs, and talking about some of the struggles they were having dealing with managing themselves and their own emotions, and how that played into managing other people. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And they were kind of touching on self-development, which is a topic that I think is really popular amongst a lot of people these days. But especially at that time, it was something that really intrigued me, the idea that you could do work and figure out maybe what is your weakness, and actually instead of thinking that is like a permanent thing, it could be changed. And actually, interestingly, one of my favorite books is Psycho-Cybernetics, and it's this plastic surgeon who realized that people had such strong limiting beliefs and kind of issues that were holding them back, that even when they were getting plastic surgery to solve what they thought was the issue of their low self-esteem and the cause of it, they were not then seeing a change when they looked in the mirror. They still saw this version of themselves that they like kind of created this like they've automated this programming of what they believe they are and who they are. And I thought that book was super interesting because it teaches us that we can actually move beyond any limiting beliefs that we've placed on ourselves. And so I feel like from that point, and I look at these CEOs, I'm thinking everyone looks up to these CEOs, or maybe just me, and thinks these people are like the pinnacles who have really reached like the heights of business success, and they have a vision and they're integrating. And so for them to admit that they're still struggling with things, I thought was really interesting. And so I just loved this concept of self-development and business. And I thought, how about I just force myself to start this podcast? I did it on a random day. I think my sister was visiting me and we were trying to record it on the bench, and I was like, okay, just shush. I'm going to like redo it. And then I like recorded 3-4 times and I like edited it quickly, uploaded it. Yeah. What I actually really learned about myself and through doing anything creative is the level of like discipline that it takes, and it's actually more creatively like a challenge within you. It's not that I'm ever fighting with the topics or the inspiration, it's the fighting with myself to sit down and do something when I say I'm going to do it. And so I did that podcast, and then I kind of stopped that in my second year. And like I said at the beginning, where I believe in like seasons, I feel like my second year I was a bit unsure of my direction. But then I went on a year abroad in my third year, and I went to Montreal in Canada, and I met some really great people there, including this retail expert strategist, really cool guy. And we had a coffee chat, and it wasn't ever going to be a podcast. I didn't think it was ever going to happen in that way, but it just started very naturally. I asked so many questions, as I tend to normally do, and he had lots of answers. And he also kind of realised when you get to a certain stage in business, and I think a lot of people should kind of pay attention to this. I'm sure some businesses do, where they ask for like a Gen Z perspective.
Sure.
But when you have so much experience, you don't know what is like the beginner kind of question anymore. You don't know what someone just entering your field would be unsure about. You kind of know it all, or maybe the way that you do it and the methods that you have learned are not the most effective way of doing it. And that's why it's nice to have like a breath of fresh air. And so I had this coffee chat with this guy, and we kind of came together again, and he said it would be really cool if we did this podcast. Arta Asks Me Anything is the name. And so weekly, or however often we do it, we bring up a topic and I say, could you tell me about fintech? Could you tell me about what this means for the retail industry?
Yeah.
Or I would bring a topic I'm passionate about and say, let's talk about the circular economy. What is going on with sustainability in business? I mean, this is a guy who knows some of the top people in business, especially in these fashion companies. And we all, I think when we're younger and we're like, why is everyone not sustainable? Why is everyone not doing this? And then you look at these people who have got decades of experience, and you're kind of like, oh, it's these people who are coming up with these campaigns or these sustainability initiatives. Like, what is it maybe that they're getting wrong? Or also, you know, what is it that they're actually doing? Because some of them are doing like some really good work. And so we started this podcast, and that's kind of where it's led me. We're still doing it, which is great. And I think it's a nice source of kind of being creative and merging two perspectives, which, I mean, in a way, every kind of podcast with a guest is also doing. But our kind of dynamic, I think, is pretty special, that we are really focusing on what would someone like me and someone like you want to know if they were entering like the retail industry.
Definitely. That's a good niche, I would say, especially like I've seen that there are not a lot of podcasts or insights or values specifically about the retail industry, because I've worked at a retail company in India during the summer, and it was like one of my best experiences.
What did you like about it?
I worked in different departments in buying, planning, sales, marketing. So I love sales.
Okay,
that was fun.
Sales is fun. I think buying could be quite fun too, deciding what actually goes on the shelf.
Yeah.
Depending on what kind of retail was it? Was it like grocery or was it fashion? Fashion. Oh gosh. Okay, buying would have been really interesting.
Yeah.
It's crazy how early on they predict trends. It's like you really wouldn't think it, but they're probably like, they know exactly what we'll be wearing in 12, 18 months.
That's very interesting, because different people have different fashion perspectives. Someone would like streetwear, or someone would like the old money vintage kind of clothes.
Yeah.
And then you have buyers who are using the insights from the brand which you're telling them. They suggest them the list, and they have the entire catalogs. And then you have to think, will this go well with the current trends or not? Yeah. Depending upon what audience does your brand cater to.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I've started to believe more and more like these days that like when I have children, or you know, any young people, I'm like, they need to know psychology, philosophy, economics, maybe some others, obviously like maths and English. But I'm just really seeing how like knowledge that I gained literally when I was doing my GCSEs, I get kind of hits of that every now and again now, and I'm like, oh my god, I can barely remember what I learned back then, but it's still somehow so relevant. And I think when it comes to fashion and like buying, these people have so much knowledge and they stay so up to date with what's traditionally happened in an economic cycle. And, you know, if we're in a certain recession, people are going to be using their money in this way, or, you know, if we're kind of in a surplus in this way. So I find it really interesting that they say, I think there's something they say like, the worse the economy is, women's skirts get shorter or longer, something like that. I was like, it's so interesting that they kind of pinpoint. I know it sounds a bit strange.
Yeah, no, I didn't
But
expect
it apparently has some like validity to it, or just, you know, this old money aesthetic that's come about now. It's why is it that one year we're so into outlandish like brands and showing everyone that I'm wearing a Gucci jacket and I've got this handbag, and then the next year we're like sleek.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. I find it interesting also how people act. I feel like the psychology there needs to be kind of investigated, because it feels very much like we're just like, I don't like saying people are like sheep, but it's an interesting kind of,
that's very fair,
kind of move.
Because I personally, in the past 2 months, I also just started dressing in like more of an old money way. I was like just subtle and sleek, so it, rather than being loud, so that you feel more sophisticated inside. Personally, for me.
Yeah. But what's your personal brand? What's your authentic fashion style?
I think right now it's this old money clothes, but generally it's been changing all the while.
Yeah, and to be honest, we're young, so like that's what you know, learning our fashion style is for. But I find it interesting. I
was gonna say something. I just remembered one point. I don't know, it's very random, but when there is a recession, you would see that the stocks of universities, like let's say Harvard or MIT or all of them, go up. Because in a recession, people invest in themselves and more in education.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend about it. He told this to me after he played football. I don't know why.
Maybe also because if it's a recession, you know, logistically, maybe there's fewer jobs. And so you're thinking, okay, I might as well go upskill myself, or being this kind of university safety net.
That was the chain of thought, that maybe you get yourself more skilled in a way.
Yeah. I find that interesting, because recently I was thinking of making like going out for dinner versus, and I didn't want to do that. I thought that would maybe be like a slight waste of money. And then I got home and I was looking up some vitamins, and I realised I happily spent probably double what I would have spent at dinner on this vitamin thing. And I had a little analysis of myself of, oh, this is interesting, what I'm willing to invest in and what I think is like worth my money versus what's not. And I think it does always, I think for me, it kind of leads towards what can I like, what's either an investment in me or what's investment in like a longer term. So yeah.
That's fair. Economics 101.
Economics 101, yeah, gosh.
With the changing times, how do you stay relevant in a changing industry?
Give me an industry. Should we talk social media?
Retail?
Okay.
Social media, whichever.
Oh gosh, how do we stay? You know what, retail, ask me in 5 years, because I have no idea how they do it, how they come back. I think that's something I find quite interesting, actually. Just a short tangent of like how certain fashion brands like Coach, for example, or maybe like Kate Spade, maybe even like Abercrombie and Fitch. Like they had quite negative perceptions, and all of a sudden they kind of emerge, and it's definitely not all of a sudden. It's definitely through some very strategic work.
True.
But I find that very interesting how they work. But I haven't figured out the answer yet, how they do it. But on social media, I think the key to staying up to date and evolving with what you see going on, I was thinking about this in terms of, I guess, if it's TikTok or YouTube, I think the people who are, first of all, open to changing, like the creators on there. And I think for long-term success, you do have to be open to changing, whether you kind of like the algorithm update or not.
Yeah.
But I think they kind of see what is being talked about and decided by TikTok, for example. They say, we want horizontal videos, we want over 1 minute videos.
Yeah.
They're pushing towards this long form, even though they've just completely destroyed our attention spans.
That's true.
Now they want it back. And so the creators that are going to succeed in the long term, I think there's a really good Amelia Liana, I don't know if you would know her because she's like a fashion beauty influencer, or like Valeria Lipovetsky, I think her name is. These are people who, they've been on social media for over 10 years. And something I noticed, and I think maybe more people who have a negative opinion about influencers and these social media creators like would maybe be interested to kind of think about it in this way. It's you know, these people are probably pushed more on average than other people to adapt and learn and just kind of go with what's new. I think it's interesting how they went from maybe YouTube, long form, you kind of learn a format. It's like with you and podcasting, if you were used to doing it for a year or 2 years, these long form episodes, and then all of a sudden you kind of realize your audience is gone and they've all gone to TikTok, and you have to learn, oh my gosh, okay, now I need to do short episodes and kind of promote these 60-second clips of you having to ask me the best question and me having to say the best like one sentence, one liner that's going to really grab people's attention, and you have to learn how to edit it. Or when you then go on Instagram and you learn, actually it's not going to work to have just static images as a fashion blogger. You need to now kind of do different graphic design or kind of do reels or videos and whatnot. I think the way to kind of stay up to date is see what is either being told to you by the algorithms and like the companies. I mean, that's obviously a good place to start if they are publishing that information. Look at people who you admire and kind of what they're doing. Think about the ways that you can do it in your own way. I always feel like you should do things in a unique way to you and kind of put your own spin on things, especially if it's like a change that you're not so much of a fan of. Like if you love podcasting like this, but if you're not so much of a fan of the short form videos that you need to post for promotion, like find a way to make it fun for you. Maybe it didn't have to be the traditional like cutting up one good question and promoting with that. Maybe it could be after an episode and we have a great conversation, you give me a mini mic and you say what are your 3 takeaways or what's one thing you want to leave our viewers with, and then that's what you promote. I feel like there's ways to kind of stay up to date, but it definitely also involves so much of being on the platform. I think some of my favorite like fashion entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs in general, I think we don't realize how much time and effort they are actually spending like reading what is going on with other fashion companies, with the economic cycle in general, and that all will play into their decisions. So I think just staying very informed, seeing what how other people also respond is a good way to know, and I think just kind of adapting and going for it, but doing it in your own ways as much as possible is kind of the way to go forwards.
Those are great insights.
I feel like they maybe work for some aspects, they maybe don't work for others. But yeah, I think if you just kind of ground yourself in always having this like learner mentality, then that's a way forward. I mean, for me, there's always going to be times, even so far in like my short career, I've experienced like times where I don't want to like adapt to doing something. Like when I started working with a CEO over the summer, I thought it was just going to be an audio kind of project, and I was very comfortable with audio editing, and I knew that. And actually what the project then involved was video editing, and I didn't know that skill, but I just had to learn it on the go. And then it involved not just like any kind of video editing, but really like fast cuts, trying to make like this trailer really engaging format at the beginning, and I just had to really learn it and give it a go. And I think that's what will get you further along. You might not remember what the certain trends are that change, but you'll remember that you gave it a go and you like have that attitude to always keep learning.
That's definitely required in these days.
The
ability to just go and get the thing done, learning the skill. I'll add to that point one more point. I was having this chain of thought a few weeks ago that in order to, let's say that you're building your own brand, instead of making it available to everyone, if you have the exclusivity factor of providing them some personalized experience, your brand will be valued more in case if you just made it available to everyone. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's something I think could be.
It's definitely true. I mean, that makes me think about in the fashion industry, there's so many brands that are trying to build communities. Yeah,
exactly. That's what I was thinking about.
You kind of wonder, I feel like that's the main example that comes to mind, because there's so much kind of conversation about like, what do you mean by community? Or you just give me the shoe that you're trying to sell me, stop trying to like put me in this weird group chat. Like, yeah, it's like, I don't care. Like some people are just going to be... But I think communities are huge in fashion brands. But yeah, it's a good way to...
One of the most recent trends I've seen is that people, they build a community, let's say of self-improvement, and they'll harness their audience, give them values and insights. After a certain time, they'll make them paid to get more personalized experience. So that's how you monetize as well as build a base as well, which is going to stay with you constantly.
Yeah. Because I think it's a lot about, I mean, what I can share from like the retail industry that I've learned so far is it's so much more expensive to gain a new customer than it is to acquire the same one. And you have so much more of an advantage if you are, whether you're building just like a community of people, like a run club, or you're building a fashion company, if you can have that kind of loyalty and have these people coming back over and over again, you're right, you do learn from them and you do kind of learn their insights. I was reading that about crowdfunding today, actually, where a huge benefit is that you can get this direct contact with your consumers so much more easily that you realize and you kind of can put your finger on the pulse of what demand is actually like.
Yeah.
So I think you really do need to be involved with your customers, or you.
When I came to your workshop, and before that I followed you on LinkedIn, and I saw one of your posts regarding public speaking. And what I felt was you're a very engaging speaker. How do you develop those skills?
Gosh, I'm so glad you
that's
think
something
that.
I want to improve personally. How to be a better speaker. Because when I start speaking in group of people, my ears just turn red. Physiologically, I just feel different.
Yeah, I think I have the benefit that I wear makeup and it hopefully covers the redness. But yeah, so you're right. We met at this personal branding workshop. I mean, that's where we met properly. And I was nervous before it. I did kind of set this goal that I think this is like going back to like the self-development stuff I talk about a lot, but I think it's useful because I think as young people, we set these goals of, oh, look, I would love to be a millionaire. I would love to like be that cool person on stage. And then you don't kind of realize that to actually get to those stages, you do have to mentally align with the version of who that would be. And so when I was thinking this year earlier about my goals, and because I've gone to quite a few conferences recently, this is just kind of like an honest like thought I was having. It's like, oh, I would love to be the person who's on the conference, who has all this knowledge and is speaking on this stage that people are like coming to see. And then I kind of thought about, okay, well, what are the steps to like work backwards from that? And when this opportunity kind of came up with the Women in Business Society, I thought, okay, how am I going to actually be interesting to this room of 15, 20 people, however many show up? And also I know that when I think to be a good public speaker, you should also always, in anything, I think, just consider the person on the other end of whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was thinking, okay, I know I have maybe an interesting kind of background so far, and I have a lot of lessons that I could share throughout sharing my, okay, I did this opportunity and this opportunity. But then I was thinking, but is that going to be then just 10 minutes if you guys looking at me and staring at me? Maybe some of you are a bit bored. And I was a bit worried about that. But I think my public speaking tips are speak slowly. Luckily, you guys all in the crowd were really engaging and like looked like you were enjoying it, which is good. I know there's so many times I'm like an audience member and it's like 6 p.m. and I'm like exhausted. I just can't be bothered to like fake a smile anymore. So I'm like, I'm hoping the person who's giving the talk is not thinking I hate them. I don't. I'm like maybe taking it in, or I'm just really tired. But I think, yeah, don't take it personally if the crowd doesn't seem too interested, because I guarantee people are probably in their heads thinking like, wow, that one sentence you just said has really given me a lot to reflect on. I think practice before I even, so because this is the one like kind of public speaking I've done recently, I'll talk about this example more specifically, but before I'd even figured out the maybe structure of my PowerPoint or what I was going to say, I was literally just walking around my house practicing like, hi guys, thank you for coming to my personal branding workshop. My name's Arta. So basically personal branding, and then I was like, no, don't start like that. And then I started again, and I was like kind of just mentally rehearsing. Yeah. Mental rehearsal is actually a really good technique to use for anything, even studying, but especially for like public speaking. And I heard this piece of advice that was saying, if you know your subject area so well, it won't matter that you don't remember this one paragraph or this one sentence that you really wanted to say that you thought was going to like leave a huge impact on people. You'll actually just go into so many relevant tangents. And I'm sure also, I think because you have podcasting experience, you and I will relate on this, because there'd be so many times I would plan out an episode and talk about something and I was like, damn it, I don't think I said anything like, I don't think I had those good sentences that I wanted to say in my head that was like boom, boom, boom. But then when you edit it back, you're like, oh, but that was an unexpected, just like improvised sentence, and that sounded so good and was actually a really good piece of advice. So I would say do a lot of preparation, know your subject area, walk around your house, practice. I wouldn't say you need to practice in front of people. I feel like not necessary. But then also, if you can, with your public speaking opportunities, take opportunities to pause, ask the audience question. It gives you a chance to then relax for a second, give them activities to do if you can, walk around. And then, I mean, I was really glad, I think that opportunity like went really well. I thought maybe where I was maybe scared that I wasn't like approachable, like a warm kind of speaker, or like funny even. Luckily that experience kind of proved to me that that maybe wasn't the case.
The activity paper bit was quite interesting because when I go to a workshop or something like that, generally there's nothing like that, but that made you think and reflect about what you were saying or what you think you want to do. So that was that gives that the personal element.
Yeah, for sure. And it does depend on what kind of personal speaking you're doing. Obviously you're not always going to give the audience a chance to kind of interact with you, but I think if you can, it also ties back into what I was feeling of am I actually providing them value in telling them about my experience? Well, okay, I think I was, and I hope I was, but even if I wasn't, then there's an activity that centers it back into the person who's come into the room, and ultimately they haven't come for whoever's on the stage or for you giving your public speaking talk or me giving my workshop. They've come for themselves to kind of learn and feel. So I think kind of always think about that.
Fair. That's pretty good. Yeah. I got one more question for you.
Okay.
This is my favorite question.
I don't want it to end, but okay.
Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Okay. I have a manifestation workshop happening in a couple of days, so this will be a good chance to start on that. I think I really don't know where I'll be in 5 years. Oh, this is fun. This will be on YouTube, so I can actually watch this. Okay. Yeah. I'll cringe at what I say now, I reckon.
In the next 5 years?
Yeah, it's fine. They say like you should always cringe looking back at like an old version of yourself. Definitely. So I'm happy to do that. I think in 5 years, I want to be responsible and taking charge of whatever it's projects or a business for myself. I kind of, when I was younger and starting the podcast, I looked at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and obviously, and I studied psychology A-level, yes.
I had that in my high school.
Yeah, and I think it was actually really interesting, and I, obviously in 5 years, you know, hopefully we'll work through some of the like psychological ones I would have developed myself. I would like to, I feel like I always think about self-actualizing with what I do, and I think that's why I want to be an entrepreneur or work for myself, because I see that as the highest form of self-actualization, to say I've got this idea in my head and I've then done the work to make it into a physical product or into a community or into a brand or into a service that I can give to people. I love traveling, staying curious. I hope in 5 years, gosh, I'll be 28. So that's a bit scary. No, it's not scary. It'll be fun. But yeah, lots of goals, like to kind of live a global life, to accomplish things. I feel like to help people is definitely the cliche, but it kind of makes sense because you help people and you also help yourself. And I think for anyone who doesn't know where they want to be in 5 years, I always kind of think about like what version of myself maybe like a few years ago would have thought would be like cool. And I always try kind of like live up to that. I always try kind of think of like past me, present me and future me. And I say like, you know, what would 15-year-old me, what would I maybe look up to and be like, oh my God, amazing? Or what would present me be like, wow, like I aspire to this person and I want to be there. So my long tangent way of saying, I hope I'm kind of being creative, being able to work with others. I love to collaborate with other people and have an idea in mind and just like go execute it. I feel like I could be kind of like a visionary. And I hope it is something to do with self-development, maybe psychology, but also like branding, marketing, strategy, kind of helping people become the best version of themselves. I think I'm like quite focused on like potential. Like I want myself and everyone else to live up to their potential. Yeah.
That's a noble cause, I would say. Good answer. Good answer.
Yeah, I mean, we'll find ways to make it good for me too during the journey, but yeah.
Yeah. There's this I don't know how you tell him, motivational speaker, athlete, or whatever. A guy called David Goggins.
Yes.
And I listened to him quite a bit. And this one of his things he said that, I think it was him or someone else, I don't remember. Like that you have to make two people proud in your life, your past self and your future self.
Yeah.
And that thing hit me. So I'm like, wherever I am, as long as I match those two criteria.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's maybe a good point to kind of really emphasize for like your audience who will be listening to this, and of course anyone in general, but when we're at this like young moldable stage, and even I will probably be experiencing this in the next year, like I'm really kind of mentally preparing that, you know, if I choose to be an entrepreneur, I might then compare myself to these people I know who are maybe further along their ladder, but it is their ladder and it's not mine. And that's also something that I find empowering about having a personal brand. It's this thing that you just focus so much on making yourself even more unique and even more individual, that how could anyone else ever compete with you? And why would you even want to compete with someone? And it could be like your favorite entrepreneur that you really look up to, but they will never they will never be you and you will never be them, and you know, it will never be the same. So all you can kind of focus on is making life for yourself as kind of self-actualized and tailored to what you actually really want to do as possible.
Yeah. That's why I say you should not look up to people, but admire the certain skills which you want to replicate.
Yeah, 100%. And when you kind of notice what the skills are, borrow them happily.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's the way to go forward.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't have any more questions. Is there something you want to talk about?
No, I think this is a good place to leave it.
Fair enough.
This was a really great conversation. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Lovely podcast.